One of the most powerful weaknesses that women must be aware of is a man's struggle with self-worth. Many men derive their sense of value from their ability to succeed, whether in their careers, relationships, or status in society. When they face challenges or failures, their sense of self-worth may crumble. This is a vulnerability that many men try to hide, but it often impacts their behavior, whether through anger, frustration, or withdrawal. At times, they may mask their hurt with arrogance or defensiveness, but underneath, there is a deep-seated fear of not being enough. Women in relationships with such men must cultivate compassion, helping to remind them that their value is not solely based on success or external achievements. By encouraging a man to connect with his intrinsic worth beyond societal standards, women can help him build a stronger foundation of self-esteem. Similarly, many men carry an underlying fear of being perceived as weak or incapable. This fear influences their behavior, causing them to act out of character in an attempt to maintain an image of strength. They may overcompensate in their actions or decisions, refusing to admit when they need help or are struggling. This tendency to protect the fragile ego can be particularly challenging in relationships. The woman who is attuned to this dynamic can offer space for vulnerability, helping to break down the walls of pride that may be limiting the man's potential for growth. Encouraging him to embrace his human imperfections without shame can be transformative. Underlying all of these weaknesses is the greater issue of a lack of presence in the moment. In our fast-paced world, where distractions are constant, many men struggle to truly be present not only in their own lives but in their relationships as well. This lack of presence can be experienced as emotional distance, a lack of attention, or an inability to connect. The act of being present requires mindfulness, a deep awareness of the now. For many men, this requires breaking free from the constant pressure to perform and achieving the next goal. Women who encourage presence in their relationships can help foster deeper connection and emotional resonance. The act of truly listening, of being fully engaged in a moment of shared experience, has the power to heal, transform, and deepen any relationship. A man's struggle with vulnerability is perhaps one of the greatest weaknesses that women must understand. When a man can embrace vulnerability not as weakness, but as strength, he opens the door to profound connection, growth, and self-realization. However, this process requires time, patience, and a willingness to confront deep-seated fears. Women, in their wisdom, can be the guides, the mirrors, and the partners who help men navigate this path of self-discovery. The power of emotional vulnerability is immense, for it allows both partners in a relationship to transcend the limitations of fear and isolation. When vulnerability is shared and embraced, it fosters not only emotional intimacy, but also spiritual alignment. Ultimately, understanding the weakness in men is not about placing blame or assuming superiority. It is about recognizing the areas where growth can take place, both individually and within a relationship. By acknowledging these vulnerabilities, women can offer the support, understanding, and love needed for men to embrace their full potential. This partnership creates an environment where both individuals can flourish not in competition, but in mutual support and respect. Through awareness, compassion, and openness, the weaknesses that men often hide can be transformed into opportunities for deeper connection and growth. When both partners embrace their vulnerability and strength equally, the relationship becomes a powerful force for healing and personal evolution. Attach. The external projection of masculinity is also a space where male weakness often manifests. The societal archetype of masculinity demands that men be leaders, warriors, protectors, and providers. These roles are powerful, but can also be incredibly isolating. Men are often expected to stand alone and shoulder burdens without asking for help. In this expectation, many men overlook their own need for support and collaboration. It's in these moments that the act of seeking help or sharing a burden can feel like a failure. However, in truth, it is the refusal to seek help that is the real weakness. Strength lies not in carrying every load alone, but in knowing when to ask for support and when to share the responsibility of life's challenges. By recognizing that they don't have to do it all themselves, men open the door to mutual support, deeper intimacy, and shared growth in relationships. Another area of male weakness emerges from a lack of emotional intelligence. This is not to say that men lack the capacity to understand emotions, but rather, they may not always know how to process or react to them in a healthy way. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage one's own emotions and the emotions of others. Men, due to societal norms and expectations, may not have developed the tools to fully navigate emotional complexity. When faced with difficult emotions, whether anger, sadness, or fear, they might default to more primal responses, such as avoidance or aggression, rather than introspection or dialogue. This can create conflict, especially in romantic relationships, where emotional intelligence is critical for resolving disagreements, fostering intimacy, and maintaining connection. Men, like everyone, also struggle with fear: the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, and the fear of vulnerability. These fears often manifest in subtle ways, affecting a man's behavior in relationships and decision-making. A man may retreat when he senses a challenge that tests his competence or emotional vulnerability. The fear of inadequacy can prevent him from fully stepping into his own potential, both personally and professionally. However, when this fear is confronted, it can lead to personal growth and an expansion of consciousness. The challenge for women in relationships with such men is to encourage them to face these fears without judgment. This may involve creating a space for open communication where a man can express his concerns without fear of ridicule. By acknowledging and validating his fears, women can help create an environment of growth and emotional expansion. In relationships, male weakness also reveals itself in the form of neglecting the importance of nurturing intimacy. Many men find it challenging to prioritize emotional connection over the demands of work or external validation. The tendency to compartmentalize life can result in neglecting the emotional needs of a partner. Physical intimacy is often a channel through which men express love, but the deeper, emotional intimacy is often more challenging for them to nurture. This is where women can play an important role by encouraging deeper conversations, creating opportunities for vulnerability, and reminding their partners of the power of emotional connection. Encouraging a man to open up emotionally, to share his fears and aspirations, can foster a deeper bond. This intimacy goes beyond physical touch. It is about creating a safe space for two individuals to truly see each other without masks or pretensions. The idea of weakness in the context of human behavior is often associated with external traits: physical strength, mental fortitude, or even social dominance. However, in the deeper realms of psychology, energy, and emotional dynamics, weakness transcends these surface-level measures. It's not about what is visible to the naked eye, but rather about the subtle forces that dictate human behavior and perception. When considering male weakness, it is important to acknowledge that weakness does not equate to inferiority. It is simply a vulnerability, an area where a man may not be functioning at his full potential. The understanding of this weakness can lead to a deeper understanding of ourselves, our relationships, and how we interact with the world. Recognizing this is not a way to diminish men, but to open the door to a richer, more compassionate interaction between the sexes. Every woman, in her unique experiences, can relate to the idea of vulnerability, whether in her relationships, her career, or her interactions with the people around her. In the same way, men have their own form of weakness, which often manifests in patterns that are not immediately obvious, but nonetheless deeply impactful. What's fascinating is that many of these weaknesses stem from how men are taught to navigate the world, how they interpret their own emotions, and how they balance their internal and external lives. One key area of male weakness lies in their emotional expression. Often, society places heavy expectations on men to suppress their emotions, to be stoic and unyielding. From a young age, many men are taught that showing vulnerability, whether through tears, tenderness, or expressing their feelings, is a sign of weakness. This ingrained idea leads to emotional bottling, where a man may feel deeply but fail to communicate it. These emotions don't vanish. They simply remain trapped inside, sometimes manifesting as anxiety, stress, or resentment. As time passes, the man's emotional armor becomes a heavy burden. The inability to openly process or discuss his feelings can make him retreat from relationships or situations where emotional vulnerability is required. The ripple effect of this internal struggle often lands on the woman in his life, who may be left feeling disconnected or alienated from him. Understanding this is crucial, because a man's emotional silence is not a sign of indifference, but a consequence of years of conditioning. Another subtle weakness that is often overlooked is the disconnection from self-awareness. Men, too, experience the overwhelming pressures of modern life: family expectations, career demands, and the perpetual search for validation in a world that constantly judges their success or failure. These external pressures create a situation where many men forget to check in with themselves, their needs, and their emotional well-being. They may operate on autopilot, caught up in the hustle and bustle of daily life, without pausing to reflect on their deeper desires, motivations, or sense of purpose. This creates an internal divide. A man may outwardly present as successful, strong, and capable, yet internally, he may feel hollow or lost. It's a form of disconnection that can lead to burnout, resentment, and a lack of true fulfillment. In these moments of disconnection, the woman who is attuned to the emotional landscape of the relationship can offer a powerful presence, a reminder to reconnect with the deeper self.